Welcome to Frontier Behavioral Health's Real Recovery, Real Change. And now, here's your host, Ashley Carroll.
Welcome to Real Recovery, Real Change. Tonight we will meet Ricky Stanley, your typical Eastern Kentucky kid whose family was torn apart by divorce. The change would send his life in a direction that would lead to addiction. Then we will meet Sher Atkins, your all-American cheerleader, who found herself becoming a mom at the age of 15. Later, a family tragedy would start her road to addiction. First, let's meet Ricky Stanley.
I was born in Martin, Kentucky. I grew up on Prater Creek up Rice Branch. I had a good childhood, a really good childhood, all the way up until the age of 9. I had a great, just loving family. I had anything I wanted when I was a child. I had motorcycles, computers. We went on vacations, just a normal family. Friends, had all kinds of friends. I was very popular in school, playing sports, playing basketball, football. I loved riding motorcycles, fishing. I loved fishing. I didn't really have any set goals when I was younger. I just wanted to go through school and knew I wanted to do something to make a change in people's lives, something that I could help people. My mom, she grew up in the Old Regular Baptist. She taught me a lot about the Bible, about church, stuff like that. Around the age of 9 and 10, I noticed my mom and dad, they fought a lot. Well, at the age of 10, my dad left, abandoned me and my mother. That was rough. Hurt, wanting to be there for my mother, and things were changed big time. But it was just me and my mother in the house at the time. We bounced from place to place. My mom couldn't afford the mortgage on her house, so we ended up losing my childhood home, and we bounced from place to place. I didn't have really any stability. My grades lowered. I couldn't, focus a lot. I had trouble focusing on my education. It's rough on a single mother. It's rough raising a kid, period. But for my mom, it was rough, being able to afford things I need. She always found a way to do it, but it was hard at times. I was trying to be there for her and help her as much as I could. Around the age of 14, I started smoking marijuana, and I realized that I liked it. I was hooked. From the age of 15 on up, I had a wisdom tooth. I went to a dentist and then got a wisdom tooth cut out, and they gave me Percocets. And I took one, and while I was smoking marijuana, and I realized I liked this feeling.
I'm a mom just like you, and I have a son that's fallen into the grip of opioids. Do I see my son as a bad person, a criminal, a drug addict? No, I still see him as my son with a tough behavioral problem that can be treated. That's why I wanted you to know about Frontier Behavioral Health. They see your family the same way. They treat the behavior and send the person you always knew back to you. Call them at 606-297-1501. Real recovery, real change. Frontier Behavioral Health.
Real Recovery, Real Change continues with Ashley Carroll.
Ricky feels abandoned by his father, and his mother is doing her best as a single mom, but problems are just beginning for Ricky.
I got a job at the age of 16. That's when I really started to dive into addiction. Anything I could get my hands on, I was taking. I started, it went from just doing 1 or 2 Percocets or to doing multiple at a time. And that's when things really started to escalate. She knew, but my mother, she loved me. Like, no matter what I did, she would never push me to the side. She'd always let me have a place to stay, so she tried. I just fell deep into addiction. I'd take all the money that I made from work and spend it on my addiction. And things really escalated about the age of 20 or so. That's when I started IV injecting, or what you call shooting up drugs. I didn't have a job at the time. I started injecting drugs. I would steal, cry, beg for money from my mother. I'd do whatever it took to get what I needed. and just use drugs, you know. I think I was battling with depression and guilt. I didn't only ask her for money, I would steal from her too, and steal from anybody, actually, for that matter. Any way I could meet my needs of getting what I needed, I would do. Usually I'd wake up sick. I'd find a way to get what I needed, whether it be if I robbed somebody or had to go rob something to get the money for what I needed. And then I would sit around all day just using drugs, just using it until the next day, and then it started over again. Later in my life, from 21 to about 28, I was using heroin, Opanas. I was injecting them daily. I was using a lot.
I'm a mom just like you, and I have a son that's fallen into the grip of opioids. Do I see my son as a bad person, a criminal, a drug addict? No, I still see him as my son with a tough behavioral problem that can be treated. That's why I wanted you to know about Frontier Behavioral Health. They see your family the same way. They treat the behavior and send the person you always knew back to you. Call them at 606-297-1501. Real recovery, real change. Frontier Behavioral Health.
Substance use disorders are prevalent in Kentucky, affecting a significant portion of the population. From 2017 to 2019, the annual rate of opioid use disorder was 1.3% among people aged 12 or older. During the same period, the annual average rate of illicit drug use disorder was 3.3% among people aged 12 or older. The annual average rate of past month alcohol use among youth aged 12 to 17, 10.7% from 2017 through 2019. The annual average rate of past month illicit drug use among youth aged 12 to 17 was 6.5% during that same period. These numbers demonstrate the widespread nature of substance abuse issues across age groups in Kentucky. Real Recovery, Real Change continues with Ashley Carroll.
Ricky is now a full-blown addict, and he's stealing from the mother he vowed to help.
My mother passed away. She passed away, I believe it was February 2nd of 23. When she passed away, it pulled the rug completely out from underneath me because I was codependent on my mother. And I found myself homeless, addicted to drugs, bouncing from place to place. And it was a bad time. Well, I wasn't going to give up. You know, I was going to keep using until I died. Finally, I got in trouble. I went to jail. I was walking down the street and I had some methamphetamine in my pocket. The police stopped me and they found it in my pocket and I got in trouble for possession. Well, I lost my freedom a lot throughout my life. I was in and out of jail. So just the fact of me losing my mother, that was the lowest point. And then I went to rehab at Frontier Behavioral Health. Well, they kept telling me to trust the process, and I listened. And I finally realized, once I got a few days clean, I finally realized that, hey, you know, if I do leave, what am I going back to? I don't have no home. So I listened to what they were saying, and it finally clicked that I needed to do something with my life, and I need to do it fast. It's about 90 days in, I realized that, hey, if I just keep doing what I'm doing and just take it one day at a time, I can get better. Well, I'm assistant coordinator at Frontier Behavioral Health. I got a place to live. I got my family back. I got goals and ambitions. I'm ready to live life. I'm blessed to be a part of Frontier and to be a part of something greater than myself, helping people. It's a great feeling. Everything played out how I went to Frontier, went to rehab. Everything worked out perfect in order for me to stay sober, and it was God. I'm gonna get back into college, get my education up, and stay sober, and the sky's the limit.
I'm a mom just like you, and I have a son that's fallen into the grip of opioids. Do I see my son as a bad person, a criminal, a drug addict? No, I still see him as my son with a tough behavioral problem that can be treated. That's why I wanted you to know about Frontier Behavioral Health. They see your family the same way. They treat the behavior and send the person you always knew back to you. Call them at 606-297-1501. Real recovery, real change. Frontier Behavioral Health.
The opioid epidemic has hit Kentucky particularly hard, with a high number of overdose deaths involving opioids. In 2020, Kentucky had the third highest age-adjusted drug overdose fatality rate in the United States, at 49.3 deaths per 100,000 people. The proportion of overdose deaths involving fentanyl rose from 29% in 2016 to 69% in 2020. The alarming rise in opioid-related deaths underscores the urgent need to address this crisis through comprehensive prevention, treatment, and harm reduction strategies. Real Recovery, Real Change continues with Ashley Carroll.
Ricky is now working with Frontier and helping individuals change their lives on a daily basis. Would Sher Atkins be able to say the same at the end of her addiction? Let's hear her story.
I had a great childhood, great parents, no addiction or anything like that. I had one of the wonderful childhoods. I wasn't abused, I wasn't neglected. I was my dad's only child, and he took care of me very well. I was very spoiled. My dad, even though I didn't need things, if I wanted them, I got them. He gave me things that, he probably didn't get as a child. I remember stories of him telling me that he would go rob somebody's eggs out of the rooster coop and take it to the store just to get a little 5-cent piece of candy. So they got shoes maybe once a year. It was a lot different in their childhood. My mom and dad, they were very well. They fought some in my early days, but I can remember one day they really got into it, and it tore me up tremendously. And they gave me a scenario. I either could go with my mom or my dad, and I just cried, and I was like, I can't pick one because, I love them both. So my dad left that night, and I cried all night long. So the next day, my dad ended up coming back, and my mom and dad made a pact that they would never fight again, and they didn't. I was in cheerleading a lot, gymnastics, and things like that. It was very time consuming, so I really didn't have a lot of free time. We had practices all the time and tournaments and things like that. I really enjoyed it, but I wanted to cheerlead, and it was something that I had a dream of doing. So good student, never really got in trouble, did what I was supposed to until I hit my teenage years. Once I hit my teenage years, I got pregnant when I lost my virginity. I was 15. So I had a child. I was a child having a child. Whenever I had her, she weighed 3 pounds and 2 ounces. So I quit school to stay home with her because I didn't trust anybody to take care of her, and my mom and dad worked. So I stayed at home. I took care of both of my grandparents as well as my premature child. I was scared. I didn't know anything about having a kid. I was a child myself. If it wasn't for my mom and dad, I wouldn't have made it through that time. He was very abusive. He beat me when I was pregnant as well as after I had the child. He cheated on me numerous times. I remember the day that I walked away from him. My grandmother had passed away, and I asked him to go to the funeral, and he hit me with a boot and it left a black mark across my stomach. They threatened many times of, pressing charges against him and things like that. But of course, I begged them not to.
I'm a dad just like you, and I have a daughter that's fallen into the grip of opioids. Do I see my daughter as a bad person, a criminal, a drug addict? No, I still see her as my daughter, with a tough behavioral problem that can be treated. That's why I wanted you to know about Frontier Behavioral Health. They see your family the same way. They treat the behavior and send the person you always knew back to you. Call them at 606-297-1501. Real recovery, real change. Frontier Behavioral Health.
Alcohol use and related issues are significant concerns in Kentucky, with increased rates of alcohol use disorder and alcohol-induced deaths. The rate of alcohol-induced deaths increased from 6.6% to 14.6% per 100,000 people between 2013 and 2020. Addressing alcohol-related issues through prevention, treatment, and policy changes is crucial for improving public health in Kentucky. The statistics paint a grim picture of the drug and alcohol addiction landscape in Kentucky. From the high rates of overdose deaths and opioid-related fatalities to the increasing prevalence of alcohol use disorders, it is clear that Kentucky faces significant challenges in addressing this crisis. However, by prioritizing prevention, expanding access to quality treatment, and supporting long-term recovery, Kentucky can work towards a healthier, more resilient future for all of its residents. Real Recovery, Real Change continues with Ashley Carroll.
Sherry is now in a relationship with an individual who is also addicted. Now that relationship has turned physically violent.
I decided to go back to school because nobody in my family had ever really graduated high school or anything. My dad quit school when he was in like third grade to help in the tobacco fields. And my mom quit in the 8th grade to do the same. So I went back and my parents paid for UK correspondence, and I went to an independent high school in Jessamine County. And there I was able to do the courses, like if it was a 60-hour course, I was able to do it on my own. Like there were teachers there if I had questions and things like that, but for the most part, a 60-hour course, I was usually done with it in like 30, 35 hours. So I would have extra time and they would let me go up to the elementary school and, read to the kids and things like that. I was able to get daycare for my child. And I was able to actually, within that 2-year period, I was able to walk across the stage with my class. While I was going to school, I also worked at the daycare where my child went. In February of '95, I remember waking up in the middle of the night. My uncle was beating on our door. And I come out, and the trailer that we lived in, it had a big bay window. My aunt lived next door to us, my uncle and my aunt. And so I grew up with my cousin. He was more like a brother than a cousin because we were always together. But I come out and all I could see was flames. At that moment in my life, my whole world was turned upside down. The fire department asked my parents to put me and my daughter in the car and back us down the driveway. So I sat and I literally watched my second mom burn to death in a house fire. It wasn't long after that. I hated the world, I hated my parents, I hated everything. I was mad at God. I didn't want to feel all those feelings and emotions, so I started stuffing them. I started out with weed and benzos, of course. At that time, my cousin had started, he really wasn't doing drugs, but the people that we hung out with had a lot of criminal things going on, and which began with a lot of criminal loyalty and stuff like that. It progressed from weed and benzos to pain pills, cocaine, LSD, whatever I could get my hands on.
I'm a dad just like you, and I have a daughter that's fallen into the grip of opioids. Do I see my daughter as a bad person, a criminal, a drug addict? No, I still see her as my daughter, with a tough behavioral problem that can be treated. That's why I wanted you to know about Frontier Behavioral Health. They see your family the same way. They treat the behavior and send the person you always knew back to you. Call them at 606-297-1501. Real recovery, real change. Frontier Behavioral Health.
Real recovery, real change continues with Ashley Carroll.
Sherry will reach a breaking point and face the challenge to try and get clean. Let's continue with her story.
I met another guy in the year of 2000. I ended up getting pregnant again. I had a little boy. He introduced me to Oxycontin, which really took me down a long path. He began being abusive because of the drugs and things. He would get off work and he would drink on his way home. And if he thought that I got more than he did, it was a bad day. There's been times that I would be cooking dinner or something and he would come in and just destroy the house. There was one evening that he come in and he had me on the floor strangling me. And if it wasn't for the neighbors down the street, I probably would have died that night. My sister actually ended up wearing a wire on us at that time. And we both was charged with trafficking. She had hurt her knee and ran out of her pain medication. And she called me crying, wanting some medicine, and dumb me, I was like, well, yeah, I probably know where some's at. And she wore a wire and we both got charged. At that time, back in that day, I had a temper out of this world, so I actually tried to run her over and kill her, which, they call it like doing something to the informant or whatever. I went to jail for like a day and my dad come and signed a surety bond and got me out. I just continued on letting the drugs take over. It made me somebody that I didn't know. I started shooting up in 2012, something that I said I would never do. It went from shooting up to not having a home, couch surfing, not eating, being in houses with no electricity, no water. I had never lived like that. So I finally called my dad and he come and got me. I remember the day he come and got me, and I went back to his house, but the problem is I took a gram of dope with me. And it lasted all that week into that weekend, and I'd went over to a friend's house and we were drinking, gambling and stuff, and I got up that Sunday and he was gonna take me home, and I remember just looking at him and just crying and saying, I'm just tired. I'm a junkie. look at my arms, look at my hands. I can't live like this anymore. So he told me, to go back, get in his bed, and we would talk about it when he got home, because he knew that if he sent me back to my dad's, then I would just get a ride back to Lexington and there'd be no hope, So I stayed there, and I ended up detoxing there. I got clean. I laid in the bed sick. So he let me stay there, and he fed me, made sure I was taken care of. I got clean. So I stayed there and I never left. Somebody that's going to go through something like that with you and do it for the right reasons. I seen something in him that I didn't see in the other guys that I had dated. And the other guys, I was looking for those things, but they just wasn't there, My life today is amazing. I wouldn't trade it for anything. My mother was able to see me clean and sober before she passed. My dad just died in January, and I was able to take care of him during his last days. And I have a relationship with my kids. They're both grown, but I talk to them daily. I have 2 grandkids. I have a career, something I never thought that I would have with Frontier. To see them, come in fighting and screaming, not wanting to be there, and then, they start looking at things differently, and they start seeing, the baggage that they're carrying around, and how that they need to unload all that and just start fresh over. And their light bulb comes on, and then you start seeing a whole different person. The thing about that is that feeling right there is better than any high I've ever had in my life.
Sherry now has 2 beautiful grandchildren that she adores. Today, she is working with individuals at Frontier, helping them beat addiction. She and her husband are planning a trip to Jamaica. I'm Ashley Carroll. Thank you for watching Real Recovery, Real Change.
This program has been a production of Frontier Behavioral Health. For immediate help, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, dial 606-297-1501. 606-297-1501. Special thanks to the Redemption Chapel Church in Paintsville, Kentucky, for providing production assistance as a backdrop location for today's program. Redemption Chapel is located at 986 Broadway in Paintsville and welcomes all who come expecting to our morning service each Sunday at 11 a.m.